This is an intro. Who needs an intro? I don't need an intro. This is just the
YouTube, what is up? I'm your OhmBoy Josh, back at you with another installment of Coil Wars, a build competition that pits builders in weekly build challenges, eliminating them one by one until only one remains and is crowned the Coil Wars Champion. This week, we asked our competitors to create variations of multi-core wire builds. Multi-core wire builds is just what it sounds like. Builds with more than one wire with more than one round core wire, really. We decided to limit that to builds that contain at least 4 core wires, round core wires, not ribbon, because stacks of ribbon, I mean, that's multi-core too. But before we get into the builds this week, I do have a quick announcement to make, a congratulations rather, to Laricus88. Laricus88 and his old lady had a baby this past weekend, so congratulations guys, that's wonderful, bringing new life into the world, all that good stuff. Awesome. And on a sad note with that, Laricus88 has decided to leave the competition so that he can devote himself to his new child and to his wife in this wonderful time. So congratulations guys, that's awesome. So after we got the news, Dwayne and I, Dwayne Rambo, the co-creator of Coil Wars, sat down, put our heads together, and decided that the most fair thing to do in the interest of the competition would be to first offer T-Use his spot back. T-Use, who was eliminated last week after his Twisted Clapton build. And T-Use graciously accepted. So T-Use, welcome back to Coil Wars. It's great to have you back, and we're going to kick it off with your build this week. T-Use, CFTP, has 2 strands of 28 gauge staggered with 32 gauge for his frames. He has 2 strands of 28 gauge staggered with 0.3 ribbon wire at the core, separated by 1 strand of 0.3 ribbon wire. And corrugated between the staggered Clapton and the staggered Snake, he has 2 strands of 0.5 ribbon wire. And then all that is fused over with 36 gauge stainless steel 304. And he mounted that 2 wraps on a 3.5mm internal diameter on the Goon. So if you ask me, when T-Use heard he was coming back, he decided to come back hard. There's just something about these 2 wraps of this very wide wire T-Use. It's so bold. I love it. And the glow shots where you see the corrugated wire and the center strands of ribbon wire just glowing up through the fuse here. It's just gorgeous, man. Just beautiful. He also included some very pretty drip shots as well. Nice little montage series there to use. Our second build comes from Teddy Damp. Teddy Damp put together a Bradiator like nothing I've ever seen before, man. It's 2 strands of 26 gauge and 42 gauge on the outside, and on the inside he's got 2 strands of 27 gauge and 5 loops of 32 gauge. Everything he used was stainless steel 304. It was so big, only 3 wraps were possible, and it ohmed out at 0.07 ohms. It is a chunky build, man. I love the look of these Claptons that come out through the gaps in the braid on the sides. That's just, it looks like it has horns, you know what I mean? It looks like it's like a dragon tail or a dragon's body or something. It just looks, and it looks gorgeous. And the color on the shots are so cool too, because it's like there's 3 different distinct sections here for the color. On the far end you have orange, and on the other end you have like a gold, and then in the middle there's like all these purples and blues. It's just really cool the way this coil all came together, man. Crazy Vapes put together a bit of an alien coil here with 6 30 gauge cores. That's like double the cores that most people put in an alien coil. The standard alien has 3. And when he aliened over those 6 cores, he used a micro Clapton of 38 gauge stainless steel 316L and 44 gauge nichrome. That Clapton, that micro Clapton, is just so clean, man. Just flawless. I don't see a gap anywhere. Beautifully put together. And the color on this build too, the color, ugh. It's like golds and purples and blues. Love it, man. Very nice. Rambo to You put together something that I didn't actually know was possible. He put together an alien Staggerton. I've always actually wondered if I could stagger and fuse an alien coil, and Rambo basically answered my question for me here. What this is 3 cores in the center that have been stagger wrapped alien style and then framed and staggered over, fused between those gaps. So it's an alien staggered over an alien and framed. It's just unreal, man. This build is gorgeous. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wraps, probably around in 2.5, 3 millimeter internal diameter. I want to say that that is 28 gauge for the cores and 36 or 40 for the alien Claptons. I don't know. Not sure. Doesn't matter. I love it. And it's lots of blues here, man. Lots of beautiful blues, some yellows, some greens for the colors. All these coils just came out so vibrant, guys. They all look beautiful this week, man. Divine 83 VBC chose to not make just one wire that was multi-core and more than 4 cores, but 2 of them and parallel them together this week. The alien coil has 4 cores of 28 gauge and is alien Claptoned over with 38. The cat track coil is 10 cores of 32 gauge Claptoned over in 30. He put the hammer and the polish to it, and it ohms out at 0.09 after a dry fire. That is a meaty, chunky coil, man. It basically goes the length of the entire clamps of the Goon. I'm amazed that you got this coil to fit, brother, but it looks awesome, peeking at me through the air holes on the Goon, and with this nice edit you got thrown on here too. I feel like I'm on another planet, dude. It looks awesome. My favorite shot has to be this one. That's all the golds and the purples and the reds coming out of this build. That or the blues, man. One or the other. I'm not sure which one is more beautiful, but very, very nicely put together, brother. Very nice. Macy Vapes this week has this beautiful build mounted on up in the Goon RDA. I'm going to move from the inside outside on this one to best explain it. In the middle he has 6 strands of 0.5 Canthal ribbon wire that have been staggered with 34 gauge stainless steel. From there he has 2 strands of 26 gauge nichrome that have been staggered with 34. Then he added another frame of 26 gauge, staggered it with 34 gauge, and then fused everything together with 34 gauge stainless steel. It ohms out at 0.1 ohms in a single coil configuration. And I love the little tiny bit of staple that's peeking out through the wraps on that core, man. And the montage, the color shot, really shows the range that you get here. Just a complete rainbow of reds and oranges and blues and yellows, and it's just beautiful, man. Beautiful glow shots as well. Very nice, Macy. Very nice. Schizopart's build is also 3 wraps and mounted up into the Goon RDA. His build, the outer frames are 0.3mm round wire. Then he has a pair of Claptons alongside it. It is 0.2mm Claptoned over with 0.1mm. And then he has 3 strands of 0.4mm ribbon wire stacked on either side. And in the middle he has a bit of a clapception, a Clapton over a Clapton, with 0.1mm Claptoned over 0.3mm ribbon wire. And then that is Claptoned over a 0.2mm round wire. And that's been all fused up with 0.1mm wire as well. Altogether it ohms out at 0.14 ohms. Schizopart got a full range of color out of this build. He starts out with some reds and golds and moves on to some golds and purples and blues to straight blues to nothing but gold and blue, which is my favorite shot of the series on it. So there's just this one with the gold and blue together. I love that one, man. As well as some beautiful glow shots, wicking shots, and juice shots. Beautiful build, brother. Beautiful. So instead of an all-important question this week, we thought it would be fun to mix it up and ask our competitors to show us where they build. Show us the pictures of their build stations, where the magic happens, where these coils, these masterpieces come together. So it's kind of like an episode of CoilWars Cribz this week. So enjoy. Teddy Damn. Divine 83 VBC. Macy Vapes. Schizopart. Crazy Vapes. T-Use CFTP. Rambo to you. So that's where the magic happens, guys. That's where it all comes together. And for some perspective, let me show you what I'm working with here. This is pretty much it right here. What you see is what you get. I got my drill, box of wire, another box of wire, Geek Vape toolkit, which I've just been using recently, my normal wire cutters, a couple of cheapo ceramic tweezers, some masking tape, glove, there's another one somewhere. My 2 vices and my Fisker's hand drill are tucked away in a little black box down there on the floor. That's it. That's it. This is my dining room table. Everything that I have to build with fits in this drawer right here. That's it. Fits in one drawer right here. And I have to clean up everything after I use it. Or Waffles will get very mad at me. Well, no, Waffles is wonderful. She's very understanding, but for perspective, this is my dining room table. I literally film in my dining room. So after I film, after I build, I need to pack up everything and put it away. I don't have like a full out build station like these guys do. And I mean, it just goes to show what that kind of dedication can do for your building skills. I'm in awe of the builders that we brought into this competition. In awe of them. All of them. In awe of you guys. You guys are amazing. But as things are and as they have been, this is a single elimination challenge. Each week, one competitor is going to be eliminated until only one remains and is crowned the Coil Wars Champion. But that decision is left to better builders than I and Dwayne Rambo. We have guest judges and a panel of judges every week who decide the fate of this competition. And this week, our judges include Proby 300, Trial and Vape, and firstkylejones. firstkylejones is a builder that a lot of you guys wanted to see judging this competition. When we put out that message to our Instagram page asking for suggestions on builders, firstkylejones' name came up a few times. And looking at his page, I was just amazed at what I saw. And even funnier is that Dwayne Rambo knows him and has known him for some time as well. So that was a fun surprise for the both of us when I invited him to take part in the competition. He doesn't have a whole lot to share right now. He says that he lives in Ottawa, Canada. He works in a vape shop and he likes to build coils for fun. And fun he has, indeed. I mean, some of these coils on firstkylejones' Instagram just blow me away. Blow me away. They're beautiful builds, man. Thank you for being a part of the competition and judging with us today. Appreciate it. Justin Trial, aka Trial and Vape, is from Idaho Falls, Idaho. He started vaping about 4 years ago. He managed a small chain of brick and mortar shops in southern Idaho. Started building coils about 2.5 years ago and started his Instagram page about 2 years ago from there. 8 months ago, he went to full-time coil making, so he makes a business out of making his coils. He makes some really beautiful ones, I gotta say. He says this doesn't leave him much time for himself anymore, but he sure does love to build. And we also had to invite Proby 300 Richie Oliver back on Coil Wars again after his 39 core Alien, his personal best that he posted to Instagram very recently. He says the More Cores Challenge was started by AJ Holland after M Turk did a 15 core Alien which beat Proby 300's 12 core that he did over a year ago. Since then, a few have joined in on the fun and he's seen some real beauties. He joined the fun as well and did an 18 core and then did his personal best, that 39 core Alien. He says he's sure that even more people will be joining in on the fun as well, so stay tuned. This week our judges placed Teddy Dampt as the top build for this challenge, so Teddy Dampt, congratulations, you won this round. And sadly this week we will be saying our second and final farewell to T-Use. T-Use, thank you again for coming back to Coil Wars and giving it your all, man. I gotta say, T-Use is a real good sport about all this, so T-Use, you're awesome, man, and best of luck to you. T-Use also wanted me to take the time to correct myself from last week. Thank you for letting me know, buddy. I actually shouted out the wrong build from last week. There was one builder that had more likes on their stovetops. So I'm going to correct that mistake right now at T-Use's bequest, and I'm going to give a shout out to Lamont Coils Co. that submitted this dragon skin stovetop coil last week and actually had more likes than the build that we shouted out previously. So Lamont Coils Co., awesome build, guys. You're awesome. And this week, the shout out for the multi-core builds goes to Coil Builder JVBC with a 6-core 32 gauge Alien coil 38 gauge alien wrap over 6 32 gauge cores. And I love this montage here because we see the full process. We see the the build getting prepped and ready to go. We see the wire coming together, and we see the wire fully built and coiled up. Beautiful little montage here, man. Awesome. Thank you. So that's it for multi-core wire builds, and farewell to T-Use. We'll miss you, buddy. But hello to our challenge for next week, the Staple Staggerton. You've probably heard the term Staple Staggerton a few times on this series if you haven't heard it before, and oftentimes I get them mixed up in my head and I call them Staggered Stapleton. Same thing. Staple Staggerton is what it is, and I call it the wrong thing all the time. But Staple Staggerton is essentially the opposite of a staggered stapled fused Clapton. With a staggered stapled fused Clapton, the outer cores, the frames, they are staggered over basically something like, say, I don't know, 28 gauge staggered Clapton with, say, 36 gauge or something like that. And in between those frames is a stack of ribbon wire. And when these wires are all fused together, it closes that staggered wrap on the frames, creating a fused Clapton. And the core in the middle, the staple, is sort of staggered wrapped over. So it becomes a staggered stapled fused Clapton. Now a Staggerton is basically the opposite. With a Staggerton, core in the middle is stagger wrapped over. When it's fused over together, that core in the middle becomes a full fuse, and the frames on the outer ends becomes staggered. So Staple Staggerton. That is a Staggerton on its basest level. It was created by a builder called Probes on Instagram. Probes created the staggered Stapleton, I was going to say, but it's a Staple Staggerton. See, I do it all the time. I call it the wrong thing. Anyway, Probes is PRO0BEZ. I don't have any permission from him to post any of his photos, so I'm not going to do that here, but you should definitely go check him out. He's an amazing builder, and his macro shots are just mind-boggling. I mean, I don't know how anyone gets this close up to a coil. It's like at the microscopic level. They're just insanely detailed and beautiful. So yeah, his pictures, I aspire to some of his pictures. They're just gush-worthy. Anyway, so today we're going to throw together a Staple Staggerton. Staple Staggerton, we're going to use our drill, we're going to use our vise with the swivel tools, we're going to use our magnified goggles. Hell yeah, we're going to use our magnified goggles. We're going to use the robot penis, the Fiskars hand drill, because I love that tool, and it's incredibly handy for something like this when you're like me and you want to go at your own pace using a hand tool as opposed to an electric drill with a lot of power. And filling in the rest of the gaps, we'll use the Geek Vape toolkit. It comes with pretty much everything you need to get up and running as a builder. Ohm meter, you got your screwdrivers, pliers, your wire cutters, your scissors, your ceramic tweezers, and it comes in a nice little carry case with room to spare for more tools as you go. Great little kit. So to start this one out, I decided to go for a core of 8 strands of ribbon wire. I believe it was a dude by the name of Joshua Apathy Miller, who in the comments mentioned that these days he just likes to fold his ribbon wire. Here it is, Joshua Apathy Miller. About 4 months ago, he says to me, "Hey Josh, I wanted to tell you that on my staple coils, I no longer cut my ribbon wire, I just bend them over and crimp them now. A lot easier to keep them all together. Instead of having 6 or 20 or however many pieces of ribbon, I just fold it into 6 pieces and crimp each fold with my pliers. Been a lot easier than trying to stack all of them together and keep them together. Figured I'd let you know." And it was a great little tip, man, so thank you. So I don't do it exactly like you where I fold them together into 6 pieces. I don't fold them into more than 4 pieces, and what I'm doing is I'm taking a strand of ribbon wire about 8 times off the spool. 8 times is like the perfect length, so I can fold them in half and it becomes 2 strands of 4 times off the spool, and then rope them through the swivels and it becomes 2 strands of 2 times off the spool. And it's perfect length for if I want to get a dual coil. I sacrifice a little bit of ribbon wire here and there as I go and make adjustments, so it's basically the perfect length to get me enough wire in the end that I have enough for a dual coil. I created that first stack of 4 plies, and then I created another stack of 4 plies, roped it on top of each other, and then I sort of bound it all with a bit of scrap ribbon wire that I had up by the end of the swivel tools. And then I clipped off the end ends, because folding the wire is great to manage it, but I don't like how the fold, what it does is it sort of bunches when I'm trying to bind it all together, so I clip off the ends so that they're all the right length. I like to use a bit of water, a bit of wet paper towel, and that was what someone on Instagram recommended to me once. I don't remember who you were, but thank you. Using a bit of water on a bit of paper towel makes all the ribbon wire kind of bind together really well. It makes them wet, it makes them sticky, so it works awesome. I love doing that, and it makes it really easy for me to sort of comb the ribbon wire down to the far end, and I wrap that end with a bit of ribbon wire as well, and then I can mount all that into the chuck of my drill, and I'm ready to make a bit of a staple. Now in this one I'm going to be staggering that staple. My Goon RDA was a bit too far away from me when I was making this coil. It was upstairs, it was late at night, the Waffles was sleeping, I didn't want to wake her, so I had to find something else I could use to weight the wire, the loop of wire I used to stagger this. Unfortunately, I reached for the Mason RDA. A little bit of a clapping to start us out. Drop the loop into place. Just in between that last loop there. Great. And then we're just going to let it rip the whole way down the strand. You kind of see how that's going to fall in between each wrap like that. Just staggers it perfectly. Drop that loop back into place. Almost the right weight, but a bit too heavy. That's what I'm saying. I mean, the recoil RDA is the perfect weight for staggering this wire. What happened with the Mason is it was all going great for a while, and then whoosh. And it just ripped the ribbon wire out of the chuck of the drill, and I was already almost done, and I didn't want to create another stack of ribbon wire and waste all that. I didn't want to start over. I didn't want to pull it out, because I think that in pulling out the ribbon, what can happen is it twists. So with ribbon wire, I do my best to get from the beginning of that strand to the end of that strand without any fuck-ups, and usually I'm just fine, but that Mason RDA, oh, you bastard, you heavy motherfucker, cost me that victory this time. But it still staggered it up to the point where I was going to be okay. If I didn't sacrifice too much ribbon, I'd be fine, and I wouldn't have too much of a gappy, ugly spot on my staple when I was done. So all that more or less worked out. My original stack of staggered staple created, I decided to put 2 layers of ribbon wire on either side of it. We can give it a tug. Just like before, fold it on in half, and then through, just like before. Find the middle and give it a tug. So it's a bit of a layered effect here. We're going to have a full-on staple in the middle, followed by a staggered staple out from there, 12 ribbon wire cores in total. Then I sort of bound that naked ribbon wire to the staggered stapled ribbon wire with a bit more ribbon wire up by the top of the swivel tools and down by the end of the strand. And then I took a strand of 28 gauge, looped it out through the swivel tools so it came out on either side. Then I combed all that together, made sure everything looked right, the ribbon wire all standing vertical, everything just in proper alignment. It has to be in proper alignment. All the ribbon needs to be standing vertical. You don't want them to be flat, you want to be vertical, you have that staple coil, you know? So from there, I wrapped a bit more ribbon wire up by the swivels, I wrapped a bit more ribbon wire down by the end of the strand. So I'm going through quite a bit of ribbon wire here. You can use tape, you can actually use hot glue if you want to, just on the ends. Don't put hot glue along your coil of wire, of course, but you can use hot glue, you can use tape, you can use whatever you want to bind these together, but you want to make sure that they're not going anywhere. You want to make sure that they're in alignment, all the ribbon is standing straight up, you want to make sure that nothing is sort of bunching, and then you can mount it on into your drill. Of course, in this case, I decided to use the Fiskars hand drill. Made it just a little bit more manageable. I'd originally staggered the Staple with 36 gauge, but going over it, I wanted to go over it in 40 gauge. A, it would make it a little bit easier clapping into those gaps, honestly, and B, would allow some of the Staple to show through. And I love the look of the Staple in there. 8 cores of Staple down the middle, I wanted that to come through, and I knew that if I used 40 gauge, it would come through a little bit better. Little by little, using this time a hair clip that my wife let me have. Thank you, Waffles, it's very pretty. I love the pink hair clip, it's awesome, and it makes it very, very easy for me to keep all the cores parallel, fuse it all in there little by little, about an inch at a time. you get really good at this, you can just use the drill and just go full speed. Dwayne Rambo, the co-creator of Coil Wars, was showing me pictures of some of his Staggertons that he'd put together for this challenge, and he was telling me how, you know, he was going full speed at 2300 RPMs with his drill. That's awesome, he can do that. I can't do that shit. No way. No way can I do that shit. Maybe if I took a lot more time learning, eventually I'd get there, but I really like the Fiskars hand drill for a learning tool. It makes it easier for me to sort of get a grip on how that wire is falling. And you know, through using that tool, I've sort of improved my accuracy, sort of improved my speed at getting through this wire. I got through this wire from beginning to end, you know, in less than an hour pretty much. I was pretty happy with my progress through it. And that's with, you know, repositioning my camera, doing all this and that, all the craziness. Still got through that wire in about an hour or so. So I was happy with that. So this Staggerton is a big, chunky wire, man. It is wide. It comes out so that it's something like, I don't know, 3 millimeters wide. You can make them smaller. You don't have to use 12 strands of ribbon wire, and I probably shouldn't have used 12 strands of ribbon wire, but we'll come back to that. You can use smaller gauge ribbon wire. There's 0.3 ribbon wire, 0.4, there's 0.2 now, I believe, and you can use something smaller for your frames as well. You can use 30 for your frames. You can go small, you can go as small as you want, and that'll bring your ohms down. But when I got this thing all wrapped, 5 wraps each, and wrapping the wire, you gotta go real slow, just like wrapping a staple. Real slow and easy wrapping it, because you don't want to get that ribbon wire all wonky, or, you know, you have to be slow wrapping ribbon wire, trust me. Once I had 5 wraps on 2 dual coils here, I knew that mounting it was going to be a bit of a challenge. So I whipped out the Warhead RDA from MCV Philippines. It was sent on over from bvapehappy.com not too long ago. And the owner of bvapehappy.com also just had a baby fever up in the vape community, guys. Mikey at bvapehappy.com, congratulations, man. Congratulations to Laricus88 again. Baby fever, man, in the vape community. Awesome. Congrats. So yeah, I threw the dual coils into the Warhead RDA, 5 wraps and a 3mm internal diameter.
Fuck.
It's fucking delicious and it's fucking cloudy. Now, before you go attempting this build, don't do what I did. Don't make it like I made it. Don't use 12 plies of ribbon wire and use 28 gauge frames. It ohms out at 0.07 ohms, and I have to fire it on the DNA 200 because the DNA 200 is the only regulated mod I have it that'll fire the damn thing, because nothing else will fire 0.07 ohms, and it won't even fire 0.07 ohms at a true 200 watts, really. It'll fire at 171 watts. That's as far as it'll go. It won't push it any further than that. It's as far as it'll go on the DNA 200. And when it does, it's only firing at 3.4 volts. That's it. It's still a great vape. It's still hot as hell and still incredibly flavorful, but as soon as this video is over, I'm going to tear this out and I'm going to put one of these into the Goon RDA and I'm going to be happy. So I don't usually dual up my Staggertons, but I wanted to for this build. Coil Wars, I wanted to go big, and I wanted to do dual Stapletons, and I wanted them 5 wraps each, and I wanted to go crazy. So I did. Would I vape this in here generally? No. My giant Staples, and my Staggertons, and my Fraples, and my Fralians, and that kind of stuff. Pretty much anything that involves stacked ribbon wire, I'd only go a single coil. Is it still delicious? Absolutely. If I didn't know that this thing was only firing at 3.3, 3.4 volts, I would never know that. If it didn't read it on the screen, I would never guess. So cloudy. Delicious. But, again, I don't recommend this build. I don't recommend you do this. And if you do, know your battery limits. Don't do what I did. Okay? Okay. Awesome. So, that's a wrap on Coil Wars for this week. Until next time, I'm your homeboy, OhmBoy Josh. Vape on, vapors.